Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Something a little bit different today. I want to start by asking you the question, what do you think of a boxer and their achievements based on what their beaten opponents go on to do in their careers? I think there's actually a part of us which subconsciously, or maybe more overtly, keeps a bit of a tally of that sort of stuff, because if a guy who's been beaten, if he goes on to do great things, or at the very least secures a decent win or two of his own, the guy who beat them, he tends to get a bit more credit or a bit more shine for their win. So the genesis for this video is actually Polish heavyweight Artur Szpilka, who I noted in a recent video, because he is fighting again soon in April, if he lost that, he'd probably be slipping into the ranks, at least in our minds, of a high-level journeyman if he drops a third fight in a row, because he lost to Adam Konowski after losing to Deontay Wilder. And a subscriber, The Inventor, he had left this comment, see on screen, regarding the trouble that Szpilka gave Deontay Wilder. But it made me think of how much weight we give a win if the opponent who was beaten goes on to be successful or starts tanking badly. You know, because there can be variable career paths. Some people can get to the top level, get beaten, and then it's all downhill. Whereas others get beaten, they come back, or others just kind of plateau after that, they have some mixed success. So with that in mind, let's look at the champions' past 7 opponents each, and what we can potentially take away from the opponents' successes and failures. And the reason that I have chosen 7 fights is simply because it encompasses the entire championship reign of WBC champ Deontay Wilder. So Joshua and Joseph Parler, they have had fewer fights at the championship level. Joshua, actually not too many fewer, but Parler, he's had 2 defences. The information to follow, it may serve to provide a bit more insight about these guys, the champions, the opponents, what they've been doing, how everything fits together. It potentially could change your mind, or it potentially could reinforce your current views. Let's start with Joseph Parler, who 7 fights ago, he stopped Jason Bergman in Samoa in January 2016. And since then, Bergman has lost 3 of his past 4 fights. No notable wins in that period since losing to Joseph Parler. Next, Carlos Takam. He fought Joseph Parler in May 2016. Takam has fought 3 times since and no notable wins. Although there is a notable loss to Anthony Joshua in which he did put up a reasonably respectable performance. Solomon Hamono, he took on Joseph Parler in 2016. He lost, and since that time he's had the 1 ring appearance to Tomasz Adamek, and he lost that as well. Alexander Demetrenko, he lost to Parler in October 2016. Since he's had 3 fights and 3 wins, with 1 notable performance against Adrian Granat, who until that point was very highly touted as a man to watch in the heavyweight division. In December 2016, Joseph Parler beat Andy Ruiz Jr., who is yet to return to the ring at the time of this video being published, but he does have a fight scheduled for March 2018. And it was notable that performance was when Joseph Parler won the WBO Heavyweight Championship. May 2017, Parler takes on a late replacement Razvan Kajanu in his first title defence. Kajanu loses and he hasn't fought since, but Kajanu is one of these guys where he's actually pulled into camps and he's a high-level sparring partner, so he can mimic styles and do different things. His fighting record here is pretty sporadic in recent years. In September 2017, Joseph Parler, he defeated Hughle Fury in his second title defence. Fury, he's due to get back in the ring for the first time in May 2018 to contest the British heavyweight title, but as at this point in time, nothing under the belt, no performances since he lost to Parler. So in Joseph Parker's case, his beaten foes, they really haven't added much luster or shine to his career by beating highly regarded opponents. The 1 notable win that has been achieved was by Alexander Demetrenko against Adrian Granat. And that's also possibly on the margins as well, because Granat, he was transitioning from prospect to fringe level contender at the time that he did lose to Demetrenko. That fight was somewhat of a step up. But for the purposes of this video, I am counting it, and Granat, he does shape to be someone who will be on the scene for a while. Still a good fighter. So from all of that, Joseph Parker's opponents, really all we can do is judge Parker on the merits of his own performances, which at times have been very good, but more recently a little scratchy. The higher he's gone, the closer it's got in some of the fights that he's been in. But should we take much from the fact that his beaten opponents haven't gone on to do much? Let me know in the comment section. Next, Anthony Joshua. 7 fights ago, he was taking on Gary Cornish in September 2015. Cornish has 4 wins in 5 fights since, but none over anyone above British level. Joshua then stopped Dillian Whyte in December 2015. Whyte has since beaten 2 notable opponents in the form of Derek Chisora and Robert Helenius. There are some other good wins at British level on his record, but for the purposes of this video, they don't make the cut. It should be noted that Whyte is now positioned at number 1 in the WBC rankings and is ranked highly by the other sanctioning bodies. Since losing his IBF title to Anthony Joshua in April 2016, Charles Martin, he's had just 2 bouts against journeyman, but he is scheduled to be in the ring again in March 2018, so no notable performances since 2016 for Charles Martin. Dominic Breazeale, though, he was Anthony Joshua's first title defense in June 2016. Since then, the American has fought twice, and he's beaten highly touted prospect Izu Agono and also ranked fighter Eric Molina. In Breazeale now, he is ranked highly in 3 of the 4 sanctioning bodies, number 2 in the WBO and number 2 in the WBC. Joshua's next opponent, Eric Molina. He's had no notable wins in the 2 bouts he's had since the pair met in December 2016. April 2017, Anthony Joshua takes on and beats former unified champion Wladimir Klitschko, who subsequently retired in the months after the fight. And of course, Anthony Joshua, he takes on Carlos Takam in October 2017. The French citizen is yet to step back into the ring. I guess what stands out there with Joshua is 2 opponents have rebounded to have some notable wins. I mean, if I'm honest, those wins that Whyte and Breazeale have had respectively, they've actually made me personally reassess the wins that Joshua had over the pair. At the time, I didn't really rate either guy that highly, but it's funny how a win can shift perceptions. And I'm not saying that Breazeale or Whyte are world beaters, but at the time, I didn't hold them in high regard necessarily. But now I do actually, on the back of their most recent performances, I do rate the win that Joshua had over them just slightly higher than I otherwise had at the time. Sometimes these things can be quite subtle actually, the shift in perception. And I'm not sure actually, when you look at it on the whole, how much does that actually strengthen Anthony Joshua's record? I guess it could lend some weight, at least to the argument that some make, that he's been fighting challenging opposition. Now last but not least, Deontay Wilder, who 7 fights ago was taking on the WBC champion Bergman, beating him and taking the strap from him. So since that time, Stiverne has only fought twice and lost both times, and one of those I will address very shortly. Since fighting Wilder in June 2015, Eric Molina, he's had 1 notable victory with a late stoppage of Thomas Adamek in 2016. Johan Duhaupas similarly has had 1 notable victory since being stopped by Wilder in 2015, with the Frenchman taking the O from the previously unbeaten Nordic Nightmare Robert Helenius in April 2016. But Wilder's next opponent, Artis Bilka, as I mentioned earlier, yet to bounce back from his 2016 loss to Wilder, losing his solitary fight since, and that was to Adam Kanelski. He's scheduled to be back in the ring on April 28th, 2018. Another 2016 opponent, Chris Arreola, he hasn't fought since his defeat at the hands of Deontay Wilder. And Wilder's first opponent of 2017, Gerald Washington, he's had the lone bout since losing to Wilder, and he lost that one to Jarrell Miller. And to round out the opponents, Bergman Stiverne, the remix. And you can see from the screenshot, it didn't end well for Stiverne. So from that lot, we have Duhaupas and Molina with a notable performance each under their belt since losing to Deontay Wilder. the Duopa knockout of Helenius, it was pretty notable just because it went against the form book. A lot of people were expecting the unbeaten Helenius to get through Duopa and continue rising the ranks. He was pegged as a real mover and shaker a few years ago. And the Molina KO, well, that was a perfectly timed punch from nowhere that pulled him out of what was, going to be a defeat on the cards. So I guess, you could look at that. The other notable performances from Joshua and Parker's beaten opponents. What are we to make of this? What are we to make of these achievements of these beaten opponents? And how does it correlate when we gauge the sum total of these champions' careers? Ultimately, it's very subjective. Each of us will no doubt weight things just a little bit differently. We'll put more onus on something and less on others. But for me, it's another data point to throw into the mix, and one that I do think should be taken into consideration with many other things when discussing what sort of careers that these guys have had. What do you make of it? Drop a comment loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.